Okay, so we have just spent two episodes here, two videos, looking at simple concept of bouncing a ball, but we've also taken a look at how we can use our curve editor to uh, dynamically alter the simple keys that we've made. We've seen how powerful these keys can be, this tool can be when it comes to animating. What do we want to look at now? We're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and file and save this as, and I'm going to save this as part 2, even though I know we're technically in part 3. But what I want to look at, I'm going to get rid of all these keys. So I just select the ball and come down here and select all the keys and hit delete. So now we have a clean slate to begin with. But what we want to take a look at is balls that, for example, like that one, started off on the ground and then, for whatever reason, propelled itself into the air, and then it stayed at very even heights until it got to the end and stopped. Now that is a very unnatural phenomenon to see happen. What generally would happen, I'm going to go back to where still got some keys. What generally would happen is instead of, if the ball is going to start here and then propel upward, unless if this ball had legs and could do this on its own, then this animation might make sense. But if it's just a ball, which it is, maybe something that was on a springboard or something and it launched it into the air. Well, it goes against the laws of gravity to bounce back up the same height, and and all of a sudden come to a stop. What would happen is each of these successive peaks of the jump would get lower and lower and lower until it lost all of its energy and came to a stop again. That would make more sense than what we have here. This was just a good exercise for our first run through. So what we want to do, we're going to go ahead and probably could, we'll just go ahead and leave these keys here. No sense in starting over, I don't think. I think we can go ahead and leave it like this. So again, like I said, I'm going to turn my auto key on, and what I'm going to say is I'm going to get rid of this first key. So just delete the selected keys, and let's say that this guy is getting dropped, and I'm going to position it like so. It's just going to drop straight down, and I can go ahead and select all this, and I'm going to move it all up here to 0 so it starts immediately. But now what has to happen, and the kind of rule that I use, something like this. Now obviously different types of balls are going to respond differently, but as a basic rule of thumb for me, what I like to do is, the way I like to think about it is, on this bounce it's going to go about half as high because it's losing so much energy. So it's going to go half as high as it did as it fell from, and then the next bounce is going to go half as high, and then the next bounce half as high as that, and we continue this on. So I'll go and do one more, and let's go to the left view here, and we'll move this out just so we can kind of see. Actually, this one should be over here, and so again half as high. So let's, for example, this guy's at 52 here. So let's do it mathematically. So it's going to start, let's say it starts at 300. Okay, the next bounce we go half, which is 150. We half 150, 75. We're going to half 75, which is what? What the hell's half of 75? Like 30 something. Let's see. 37.5. So we'll say 37.5. And then the next one will be 18.7. And so it's at 30. So 30 actually is the ground. So when he goes down to 18.7, this is obviously gone through the ground, so we can just go ahead and say he has hit the ground at this point. So again, we half the height of the bounce with each successive bounce, but we also want to half the distance that he's traveling, and we can see that this is going to be the y coordinate here. So if he is, let's say he's at 130, okay, and then he moves over to negative 57, so 130. So that's a difference of 93. So we can, so this will be the first bounce. We can see this is not, because he's falling straight down, he's not going to bounce this far over. I'm going to go ahead and just move this in about like this, and do the same thing here. And here's where we can start using, I'm going to come up here and bring my command panel back out, and I'm going to create a line. I'll hold shift so we can just see very easily what's going on. So he hits the ground right there. The next one hits here. Alright, let's center this guy. So now I can see where the halfway point is going to be, so I'm going to hold shift and rotate this guy up, and we'll do this with our angle snaps on so we can get a even 90 degrees. So now I can see that right there, if I move this over, this is halfway. I'm just going to go and do that again just so you can kind of follow with me. Again, we know that we want to have half the distance, so we've got where it hits, and we're not worrying about the way the tangents look right now. Remember, we got to get our main keys done first. So he hits here, and he's going to land here, so this is what this line represents for us. Now, halfway through this line, which is why we went in and we adjusted the vertices so that it lines up with where it needs to be, and then we affected and centered the pivot of this object to itself, so that when we rotate and hold shift and go 90 degrees and just hit OK, that we now know that this is the halfway point between these two. So that's why I then can hold a copy, hold shift, and drag out another copy, and now these two, if I move it like this, this tells me halfway where the next one should be. So again, I'm going to just make some adjustments. I know that, whoops, just pull this straight back. Right here is where that one should be. Okay, and then again, if I rotate this guy down flat, or we could actually leave it like that and use this one, come back in here and move this guy. So this now is the measurement between the last bounce. So again, we will go to Effect Pivot Only, center the pivot to the object. So now we can do our rotate, hold shift, and once again we now know how far the next bounce should be. And we'll just move this over here. So now I can see where this last bounce should occur. And I'm going to just quickly move this over, because 70 needs to be right back there. Alright. So obviously we have, by just moving these keys, we have kind of ruined our height here. So we know we're 300 and then 150, and this one should be 75, and then what was it, 37. So we are cutting the height half as much with each bounce. We are closing the distance half as much with each bounce. And the final thing that we need to do, because right now all these bounces are happening in the same time interval, the time in between these bounces need to be half as much. So let's say we've got this first bounce, which goes from 10 to 30. Okay, so that's 20 frames. So the next bounce from 30 to 50 should happen, and since it was 20 frames for this one, so these two need to happen within 10 frames. I'm going to cut that half as much. So the final bounce needs to happen within 5 frames. So what we're going to do, I'm going to undo, just so we can kind of see what's going on. I'm going to bring all of these keys. So we have, so the first one is going from 10 to 30. Okay, that's one bounce, and it's a 20 frame interval. So now I'm going to select all of the rest of the keys, and what we're looking for here is we are watching for this key right here, frame 50. Since it was 20 for the first one, this next bounce has to happen in 10 frames. So I'm watching for this key right here to hit right here. So I'll scale this in, select on these, scale this in, and I can see that it tells me down the bottom left corner I've scaled it down 50%, which is our half as much concept, and this bounce right here is happening in 10 frames. So now this last bounce has to happen in 5 frames, and I'm going to adjust the end time just so I can see a little clearer what's going on. And again, I will scale this in. I can see it tells me down at the bottom scaling 50%, and now what used to take 10 frames is now taking 5 frames. And obviously there is no perfect middle point here for this key, since we can't go into a 0.5 frame. So as we see, we're getting this nice diminishing effect with our ball. Now it's just really a matter of the tangents, and we can see what's going on here with the trajectories, what's going on with our ball. And looks like placement of this dude needs to be centered. And again, I'm just going to kind of eyeball the same thing, halfway between these two, halfway between there, and let's see. So what would the next thing that we would want to do would probably be, because I mean, looking at it, it looks like, you know, the ball is losing its energy pretty well. It could maybe, you know, do a couple more bounces here, but we would just continue on with the same concept, half as much, half as much, half as much, on and on until we're basically one frame apart, and we find that we're in the exact same spot. And obviously that would be the point at which we now have found ourselves to be completely resting on the ground. I can see that we do have the possibility of cutting this bounce right here in half. So what I'm going to do is just I know that we were at a 5-frame interval with this last bounce, so I'm just going to go ahead and go to 5 frames. I'm going to, without worrying about getting all into this again, I'm just going to eyeball probably about what half would be, and then split the difference between 45 and 50, which again we said there is no perfect middle point. And I'll move this up about halfway. And again, we know that this last bounce needs to be half as much as this one here, from 40 to 45. So that means that this one needs to happen in basically 2.5 to 3 frames. So we'll just do something like that, and I can see where this guy here should be a little more centered like that. And so now we are at the point where we are in this 1-frame interval. I'm going to go over here, split the difference again, come back, split the difference again here. As you see, we're just diminishing this entire thing out. But just like that, we've created a pretty nice example of gravity kind of taking over an object, and we see that the poor ball is just losing all of its downward force, and gravity's basically winning the battle here. It's pretty good animation. The only thing that I don't really like this first bounce. It doesn't really make sense that if a ball is dropping straight down, that it's going to all of a sudden find this sideways momentum. So I mean, if we wanted to, we could make it seem like the ball was getting, thrown down at an angle, like so, just to give even more illusion or direction or possibility to the fact that the ball has this sidewards momentum going on. But hopefully this has helped. I mean, it's just the concept of halving when we want to do something like like a ball that is losing its momentum over time. The same thing. Do another quick example. We'll go ahead and save this one. And I'm going to hide this ball, and I'm going to make a cylinder, and let's just go to my perspective view here, and I'm going to bring the sides down. I want to give it some height segments. So I'm going to put a bend modifier on this guy, and it's the same concept as like those door stoppers that I'm sure we've all played with at one time or another when we were a kid. We sit there and we pull it down to one side, and then it flops to the other side, and back and back and back and back, and so on until it finally comes to a stop. It's the same concept as that. We are introducing energy or momentum into an object, and that energy is not permanent energy. The energy is going to diminish either through gravity or just from the diminishing of energy over time. And it's the same concept with the ball as with this thing, and you kind of approach it the same way. So let's say the very first key. Okay, so let's say 15. 15 is pretty good, pretty easy to half, but again, I think 10, going at a time rate of something like that is just a little easier to do, to cut into half. I mean, we could go with like 17, but what's half of 17, and then what's half of that? So again, I like to kind of keep things pretty simple. So I'm going to pull this guy down, let's say 145. Okay, so that's going to be the first one, and we're doing that at a frame. I'm going to go ahead and do 20, just to give us a little bit more chance for this energy to dispel out. So we're going to go ahead and say if the first one is happening at 20, then obviously the next part should happen in 10 frames later, since it took 20 frames to get here. But what I'm going to do, just to let it last a little bit longer, is I'm going to take 5 frames off each time with this one. So we were going, it's 20 frames for the first key, so we'll go 15 frames for the next one. And we want to cut this 150 in half, so we're going to go back to the opposite side, but we will go to negative 72.5, which is half of 145. So we can see that it's already lost some energy right here. We went 15 frames, so I'm going to go 10 frames to this next side, and we're going to go back over here to positive 36.2, which is half of this 72. And then I'm going to go ahead and add some more time, just to give us some more room to play with. So we went 10, so I'm going to go 5, and this time we're going to go into the negative range since it's the other side, but we'll go negative 18.1. And now we will go, since we went 5, we're going to go 3, and obviously half of 18 is going to be 9, so we will go positive 9. And so we went 3, so let's go 2, and this would be negative 4.5. So we skip 2 frames, so now let's go to 1, and this will be 2, and then we'll go 1 more frame, because we want to both diminish out the time in the keyframe time, but we also want to diminish out the angle, how much it's actually been bent. So we will, so we've got 9 to 4 to 2, so I'll go 1 more frame to negative 1, 1 more to 0.5, 1 more to negative 0.2, 0.1 to 0. And as we can see, we're getting a nice spring effect going on here. Now, if we wanted to speed things up even more, then obviously we know how to do that now. Let's say we wanted this first spring to happen faster. Well, I'll select these guys and I'll scale them in. Now obviously that's springing a lot harder, but the fact is we're still diminishing out the energy. But hopefully this gives you a good understanding of the principle of diminishing out this energy. So it's still a little bit too much. I'm going to, so we went to 35, so 35 is where this guy should be, and that should be about back where we were. And I'm pretty happy with that for a very simple animation. But we got to keep in mind, what's the timing? What do you want to see happen? Um, you know, if you want this whole thing to really kind of last a long time, then, you know, like here I decided to, you know, the pullback, you know, is going to be 20 frames. Now, does it have, you know, why did I do that? I mean, it could be the kind of thing to where maybe a character is pulling this animation, and, you know, he's pulling this back really quickly, and then he lets his finger go. So it doesn't have to, you know, start with that kind of principle. But then if we pull back that hard, then this speed here doesn't really make sense. So I want to take this whole thing and we'll speed this up. But you know, again, you keep tweaking it. But this is the concept of, you know, how to get rid of that energy. This whole thing should happen a lot faster, in my opinion. But now all of this needs to happen faster. And I think that, let me see. Now I think that this diminishing can start to slow down. So I'm going to drag this out a little bit. We can drag it out even more. So yeah, see, it's looking a lot better. But you see how, hopefully you see that, you know, once the keys have been made, that's kind of the important thing that I want to have you be aware of, that you make the keys first. We know what our main keys are going to be. Once we know what the keys are, then we can play around with them, because that's why, you know, my formula as animation is timing plus change, and that's what we've been dealing with here is the timing. You know, we're going to go at 10, then we're going to cut it in half, or we're going to, you know, take it down by 75%, whatever. We're getting the timing. We are getting the change. We're cutting in the angle in half on each return. You know, that's the change. And now it's the emotion. You know, what's the emotion that we want to get? And now we can play around and you know, create until we get the kind of emotion that we're going for. So anyway, hopefully you've learned something from this. I hope that you have, at least. This is really basic stuff. This is really fundamental stuff, but it's still fun. It's fun stuff to me. But anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed this. I really kind of wanted to hit this home before we did anything else. And let's bring this guy out. Let's see our ball again. Yeah, that ball's looking pretty good as far as getting a sense of it diminishing. So anyway, I will see you next time when we're actually going to start with our Bowerball rig. And obviously you can go ahead and download that now, and we're going to start using some of these concepts here, but we're going to apply it to a little bit more complicated of a character than just a ball like this. But again, points to remember here is the diminishing. Even if we were to, let's say I wanted to have, for example, let's say we wanted to have the ball sliding back and forth, you know, and something like this. The concept is going to be the same. We're going to be cutting it in half. The first time it's going to come here. The next time, you know, and then we also have to keep into it, you know, take into account what kind of surface is it on. The surface that is, you know, because then the surface introduces friction. Some surfaces are going to have less friction, where if it's less friction, the ball might come here. The next time it might come as high, and then this time it'll come a little less, and then but same place, and then a little less, and then same place, and then a little. I mean, who knows? There's all kinds of things that have to be taken into account, but the concepts are still the same. Each time, if the ball is not going as far, it's not going to take as long to get there. So we cut it in half, we cut it in half, or whatever percentage that you want to use that you seem to feel is giving you a good result. The point is you make those keys, this point, and all this sliding down could actually be created with our curves. And obviously this could be a whole dynamic simulation, and we can just do it like that, but to hand animate it, the principles are going to be the same. And I hope that you have kind of gotten a sense of that from everything that we've kind of covered in this lesson. So thank you again for watching our introduction here to animation, to learn some of the tools that we have available to us, our trajectories that we can turn on, how to use our curves, how to use the selection range so that we can speed up or slow down certain parts of an animation, how we can scale in, how we can move and rearrange particular keys, how we can select keys and copy the keys so that we get back to certain places. All these things are really important tools to have in your arsenal. Remember, Control and Alt at the same time. Left mouse is going to adjust the start time of an animation, and the right mouse is going to adjust the end time of an animation, and the middle is going to allow you to scrub a particular range that you have set up. So I hope that you got something from it, and we'll see you next time where we're going to actually use a lot of what we've learned so far, but we're going to take it to the next level and start looking at things like secondary animation and squash and stretch. So I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.